With that, I think we're ready for questions.
Chief, you didn't do anything wrong. What are we doing here?
Phil, I've wondered that for the last several days. Why are we here? I think, like my attorney said, I believe there's ulterior motives as to why we're here. This department has been working hard. The officers in the Oakland Police Department, whom I'm extremely proud of, have been working hard. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have misconduct. It doesn't mean that every officer is going to be perfect every day. But we have processes in place to hold those officers accountable. We're talking about a minor vehicle collision. We're not talking about a scandal. This is not a scandal.
Were you given an opportunity to respond to the report before it was made public?
I was not given an opportunity to respond.
And Chief, your attorney just alluded to it, but we need you to say it specifically. Talk about the monitors in your written statement provided by Sam. Financial self-interest, extending lucrative. Tell us about that part, please.
Well, clearly there's a motivation here. If the judge were to accept this report as it's written, it could potentially lead to an extension of our compliance, our NSA oversight. That is problematic for the city of Oakland, the residents of Oakland, and it doesn't really highlight the work that has been done over the last 2 years to get us to the point of finally being out of the negotiated settlement agreement. Our police commission is prepared to step in and oversee the department. This, to me, clearly is a last-ditch effort to destroy the credibility of me, destroy the credibility of this department, and to make the community believe that, again, OPD is involved in some shady business, and that's not what this is.
Chief, you talked about the motivation of the federal monitor, but it was the mayor who placed you on administrative leave. What's her motivation here?
I don't think that the mayor has motivation. I think that the monitor clearly communicated with the mayor what he would like to be done. And I think the mayor followed the monitor's recommendation. I mean, it's hard to say a mayor that just has been in the seat for a couple of weeks would truly be able to push back against the monitor at this point. But I think for those that have been around here and have seen many chiefs fall, the common theme when those chiefs fall is that it comes based on the monitor's recommendation.
So it sounds like you don't blame her.
Well, I don't blame her for these actions because the actions came from a recommendation from the monitor. If you don't have the report, which brings forth information that is inaccurate, information that is not consistent with providing clear evidence, then I think you put a mayor in a very difficult position. It is a report that is unfair to have to look at, even as I read it. And so I understand the position that she was put in.
Chief, if you're truly saying that the monitor is acting in self-interest, what the next logical step then is what? Should there be some consequences for the monitor if you truly are accusing them of acting in their own self-interest for payment?
I'm saying that somebody has to investigate the issues related to this incident, because I know that I did nothing wrong. And for me to have to fight to remain chief of police is unfair. It's unfair to me. It's unfair to the citizens of Oakland. I was born and raised in Oakland. Everybody that knows me and covered me knows I'm passionate about Oakland. The idea that somebody would take this opportunity to try to ruin the long history that I have in the city is really offensive. And it's not only offensive to me, it's offensive to Oaklanders. And tomorrow, Tuesday, at 12th and Fallon at noon, I think our community will come out and stand up and say that. This is offensive to Oakland. And as an African-American chief who's trying to change the way this police department works in this community, it's offensive.
Chief, can you address the contents of the report? It said that you okayed internal investigations without reviewing the evidence, investigations that had been altered. Yeah. Can you address that?
What I'll say is that there's a process that we go through at the Oakland Police Department that every chief over the last 12 years have followed. It comes through a meeting where the chief is presented a case by the investigators and that internal command staff, which includes all the commanders from IAD who have all reviewed that report. No chief would ever be able to do his or her job if they had to review over 200 sustained findings or cases that we sustain in OPD over a year's period. I hope you all want me to actually do my job of running the Oakland Police Department and addressing crime in this city. If I were to accept the fact that I need to review, then why do I have a chain of command? Why do I have commanders that are responsible for reading these reports and providing me an accurate account of what happened? That's what I got. My decision was based on the information that my investigators and my staff brought to me. And that's how I made the decision. In no way would I accept that they didn't provide evidence. That's a problem. In no way would I accept that somebody engaged in misconduct and not addressed it. This is the process that we've used over the last several years. Do I think now in hindsight that we, based on some of the recommendations, that we could tighten that structure to make sure that there's even higher levels of review? Yes.
Chief, was there someone on your command staff that was responsible for fully reviewing the report before it got?
So I'm just going to jump in. I appreciate the questions on this. Since there is a pending question about the chief's future, I think we're just going to stick at a high level in terms of the contents of the report. I know that it's interesting. The chief's view is strongly that it contains many inaccuracies. It's not complete. Just for now, we have to keep it at that level, and I appreciate that.
Can you explain what the status of the report is right now? I mean, where is it now? You say it's not complete. Other people are saying that there's more information that needs to come out. Where are we with this report, and should it have been released at this point?
So my understanding is probably no different than yours. The mayor has alluded to ongoing information that she's collecting. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but right now there's been the summary report that was released to the public by Judge Orrick, and then that report references confidential, more detailed reports which have not yet been made to the public.
And you may have alluded to this earlier, but are you taking any legal action or preliminary steps at this point as his attorney?
Right now, I'm simply representing the chief and seeking his immediate reinstatement while he's on leave.
If that does not happen, what's your next steps?
We'll address that if hopefully we never get there.
Chief, how did Robert Warshaw get a hold of the IAD conclusions?
I'm sorry?
How did the Federal Monitor get a hold of the IAD conclusions? How did this get to the Federal Monitor in the first place?
I think to my attorney's point, there's still more investigation to be conducted, because I do think that at some point, when we see the final investigation, we'll know more.
What tools do you have for him to be reinstated, and how long are you going to wait for that to happen?
There are various, well, at this point, it was the mayor's decision to place the chief on leave, and so we believe that when the mayor completes reviewing the materials she's talking about, she'll quickly realize what the chief has said today, is that he did not violate any policies and he should not be on leave.
Did you make this case to the mayor when she informed you of her decision, and what was her feedback at the time?
I won't discuss my conversations with the mayor.
A similar question asked slightly differently. Do you place any blame on any members of your command, from, let's say, DC to the captain of internal affairs, for not giving you a fuller picture? Or is it the same thing? The monitor should not be casting you or others as the fault person or fault people for this?
I think there's an ongoing investigation. Obviously, I don't have the conclusion of that investigation. I simply say that there's a structure in place for review of all internal investigations. That is a structure that has been in place for several years, and it's never been questioned, not by the monitor, not by any other body, about how we review internal investigations. If you were to look at past reports, you'll see that they're clearly in those reports. It establishes from the monitoring team that they had no problem with the IAD investigations. And so I feel confident that the process that we had in place on that day works. My expectation is that my commanders in internal affairs, all the way up to the deputy chiefs, review these reports thoroughly, that when they come to a Friday meeting, that they bring all of the evidence related to those cases so that I can make the right decision. It's not fair to the officer if I don't have that information. It's not fair to the community who makes the complaints oftentimes if I don't have all of that information, so that I can make the best decision.
Speaking about the community and ulterior motives aside, how do you explain or make the case to the average Oakland resident how this affects them, for people who may be thinking, oh, this is just insider political infighting?
No, I think because it pulls at the credibility of the Oakland Police Department. And that really has been something that I have been focused on, is rebuilding the reputation of this department. I've been trying to demonstrate to the public that we are compliant with the negotiated settlement agreement. That's been tough work. The police commission has been a partner in that through the hard work that they've done to help us approve policies. So I think all of that begins to erode when these type of reports come out, and then this reminds this community of the same old Oakland Police Department that they had experienced with over the last 2 decades, and that's not who we are. This is a young department with a lot of great people working for it. They should be recognized for the work that they do, and I don't want this to tarnish that. It is hard enough solving crime in the city of Oakland, but it's even harder when people tarnish our reputation to the point where people don't want to communicate or deal with the Oakland Police Department. That's what I want. That's what concerns me for this community, is that they lose trust and faith in the process.
Chief, do you think you're the first to experience this type of exit? First chief to be exited like this, or are you the latest in a series?
Phil, I think you've been around here a long time, and this is not the first time you've been to a press conference where a chief of police is talking about them wanting to save their jobs because of this same type of event, if you would. And so this is the playbook. But I'm saying today that I don't want to be anyone's scapegoat, that I didn't do anything wrong. I followed the policies. I followed the protocols. And for that, I believe I should be reinstated.
So the monitor's done this in the past, according to your information.
Like I said, many chiefs have been before you being terminated as a result of recommendations. I'm clearly here before you now because of a recommendation from the monitor.
Chief, the report mentions the captain overruled a lieutenant regarding the report. The question is that captain still with the Oakland Police Department?
Like my attorney said, I'm not going to speak to people's due process because I'm not at liberty to discuss an open investigation. This investigation is still open, and so I want to be clear that it's not appropriate. Even it wasn't appropriate in this case to even name me and to tell the public of what I was sustained for. And so I'm not going to do that today. I'll let due process take place. These officers deserve fairness. They deserve an opportunity to vindicate themselves, and I'm not going to engage in that.
The report said the officer just received counseling, though, wasn't disciplined. Is that incorrect? Is that one of the inaccuracies?
I won't speak specifically to those things.
Chief, you mentioned this as just being a minor traffic or a car collision. But the point is the contention was it wasn't so much the collision, it was how it was not reported honestly and how it was not reflected properly in the reports. Do you acknowledge that there were things done that were wrong in the reporting of that?
I think the investigation that was done is consistent with the information that was provided to me. And so I think from my perspective, I believe that what was brought for me, in front of me, the evidence supported the findings that I approved.